How long did it take before you sort of made that connection of like, oh, this is something that I actually enjoy?
It really drove me nuts to be completely honest. Like I was like, when is it gonna break through? I went for my first ever 4 mile run, and like I broke down and started crying. It was the first time I ever got the runner's high. It was the first time I ever like felt like a runner in quotes, and that was like the moment it all just clicked. Like, oh, this is what people are chasing.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking part in this immersive listening experience. A meaningful existence is a moving target that, no matter how close, will always be out of reach. We hope this message finds you with an outstretched hand. As we attempt to uncover complex truths, remember, life's toughest questions can be answered if we all just focus on one thing: being good people.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Good People. Today, I was joined by Alex Hermanson, or better known for his Instagram handle, Herm Runs. In today's episode, I talked with Alex about his intro into running, how he ran the New York Marathon and subsequently ran an ultra marathon, the state of creators on the internet, and so much more. If you guys are watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on our post notifications so you don't miss our weekly uploads. Enjoy the show. Alex, I really appreciate you coming on the show, man. This is awesome. You're one of the guys that I've been following your Instagram for a while, and I love your, especially like the eating on the run stuff. And it's cool to get the chance to meet you.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you having me on. I've been having so much fun with all the eating on the run stuff, and really just exploring like the boundaries of how far you can take running content, right? I mean, so many people are watching other people just run and tell you their splits and things along those lines. I'm really having fun trying to like think outside the box and take you on a little bit of a journey that doesn't actually have to do with running while we run.
Yeah, I was when I first got into running, I was 19, and my roommate in college was we went to the same high school, and he was on the cross country and track team. And the college town that we're in, where we were living on campus, was like 2 miles from this burger joint in town called Jack Brown's, and we did it a couple times actually. We ran from our dorm to Jack Brown's, ate a burger and fries, ran to a steak and shake that was on campus, and then ran back, all with the intention of like, who's going to throw up first. And we never did. So we just kind of made it a tradition to keep going. And I remember when we were doing it, we would be sitting down eating and like, man, this would be like a good podcast or like a good YouTube series of eating, running to your various locations and eating.
Yeah, until you throw up. What town is this? Where did you go to college?
I went to JMU, James Madison. It's in Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Yeah, I was about to say you don't get a steak and shake. I went to school in Richmond, well, right outside of Richmond in Ashland, Virginia. So, yeah, those southern delicacies are the best.
Yeah, I think it's the only one. It was like on campus, and I was surprised when they put it in there.
Yeah, I mean,
steak and shake's fire though, dude.
So good. So, I mean, would you rather have steak and shake or cookout though?
I've never had cookout.
What?
Oh wait. Sorry.
Man.
No, I've had cookout. When you said that, my brain went to In-N-Out.
Oh no, yeah.
I've had cookout plenty of times. I think I'd rather have steak and shake.
Really?
I'm not really a fast foods guy. Like I don't eat it a ton. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'd rather do steak and shake.
Yeah, I think that my college brain kind of takes over when it comes to those two because we had both, and cookout is always the cheaper one because you could go to cookout and eat like a real meal for $5 with one of those trays.
Like not just a real meal. You could eat for like 3 days for like $10. It was awesome.
It was the best. It was as a broke college student, it was the best.
Yeah, absolutely the best. Well, man, I'm really excited to get to meet you. Give me the 30,000 foot view of who you are and all the things that you're involved with.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, I am a guy who likes to eat on the run, but I'm a lot more than that. I'm someone who has always been interested in content and making content and showing kind of a creative side of my life. And I finally found a great place to do that in the running community. But before that, I was doing it, a lot of lifestyle things. I did a lot of lacrosse content. I was in that space for a while. And I've had the opportunity to really, expand upon it through running. But outside of that, I mean, I like to have a good time, hang out with my friends, go out, right after this, we're going to go do a little happy hour run with our group. So like, there's a lot of different layers to to me. And I think that so much of that is involved with like building different communities in my life. I mean, I think that, one of the most important things we can do is surround ourselves with fun people and having a good time. So I make sure that I'm always trying to do that, whether it be through running. I golf a lot, I snowboard, I mountain bike, I do all these different fun things. And I think with the intention to just always make sure that I'm surrounding myself with other people that like doing the same stuff. But especially with running, because it's something that's kind of taken over my life since I really started and dove right into marathon training off the jump and have kind of just never looked back. So that takes up a lot of my time. But outside of that, I just, like to do those other things too.
Right on. How long have you been running for?
I'm coming up on I'm coming up on a year and a half. Well, no, I guess it's more than that now, eh? Because November 2022 is when I started. And then I ran the marathon 1 year later. And I guess we're about 6 months away from that now, aren't we? From
Yeah.
November. Wow, that's
Dude,
crazy.
I appreciate that mindset a lot because I'm somebody who did the same. I've run, I would say that I'm a seasoned runner at this point. I've done like maybe 2 marathons, a couple, and maybe like 3 or 4 that distance unofficially for training. I've done a 50 miler, 250Ks, and I did 100 miles in September of 2022. So, but I'm the same where like I started running in 2019 with the intention of doing ultra marathons. And sometimes I follow people who have goals and, they just post about their training, and it's awesome, obviously, that they are pursuing it. But I almost think that some people get a little fearful to just throw themselves into the super big distances, be it marathons or farther, due to a lack of training. But it's cool when you come across guys like yourself who a year in you're doing a marathon.
Yeah, I think so many people are afraid of like the unknown of the distance because like you don't really do it as frequently. When that's the thing that excites me, right? So like so many people are like, I know that I can capture, I don't know, a 7 minute mile, a 6 minute mile, like one of these at a time, because that seems so much more tangible. For me, it's like that sounds so boring. Like I want to see how far I can push my body to like I literally collapse. Like I crossed the finish line of the New York City Marathon and was like, although that really sucked, like that was one of the harder runs I've ever gone on my life. I could keep going and I could go further. So it's like that's why the ultra thing, really entices me. Because it's like one, you get to eat while you do it because I love doing that, and two,
Quesadillas, bro.
dude, the quesadillas during my ultra were that's what I ate the whole time. So like it was an 8 hour loop race, and each loop was about just under 4 miles. And every time I came back around, the lady was there with the quesadillas, and I grabbed one every single time. And that single handedly helped get me through the day because it was raining, it was cold, it was gross. But 34 miles later, I became an ultra marathoner, so that was pretty rad.
Yeah, I am well versed in the ultra marathon quesadilla. It's the quesadilla, and I also like soup, like broth. It's
Yeah, a little.
I call it the magic elixir. It's the thing that if you can't stomach anything, you can generally get down some broth, and it's yeah, those two together, it's a wonderful combination.
Yeah, as my mother would say, it's like she'll make a matzo ball soup because we're Jewish, and she'll call it Jewish penicillin. It just fixes you right up. And like there is something like the latter parts of an ultra when you drink like some broth and you just feel it kind of running down your esophagus. It just feels fantastic. I don't know how to describe it. And there's really no other time in my life where I've wanted soup in that way, but in an ultra marathon, it did the trick. But I would certainly say you're a seasoned runner, to say the least. Yes.
Yeah, well, I guess my point with that was just I encourage people to jump in more ready to take on those sorts of challenges. And for the exact reason that you're talking about, I think people are fearful that they'll have a slow time or their paces won't be great. And it's like I'm a runner that I train for these events. I do it. I take a lot of time off. I train for these events. I do them. I take a lot of time off. So I've never really been able to, because I haven't consistently done it over the years, nail down very fast mile times. Or, the guy who finished the 100 miler that I completed literally could have ran the race twice by the time that I was done. It took me 34 hours. And that's just never been important to me. for the exact reasons that you describe. It's always about how far can I push my body. I understand, at some level I'm going to hike or walk or have to do these things, but to me, it's always just about covering the distance is the reward.
Couldn't agree more. I think that just gets me so much more excited. It gets me like revved up. I mean, like the idea of like Cocodona 250. That's like my ultimate goal. Like going 250 miles. That gets me so much more excited than someone being like, "Hey, you could go run a 250 marathon." That doesn't do it for me. That sounds so much more miserable, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know what it is in my head that, like, just running 26, not just 26.2, but running a marathon fast sounds so much worse than just going out and enjoying yourself for 250 miles. Something crazy about that. I don't know. Maybe it's like probably because I've never been deemed fast in my life in anything that I've played, whether it be hockey, baseball, whatever. So maybe it's part of that. I don't know, but something about that just fires me up. Like 250 miles, that would be epic.
I think the appeal to the long distance, I think everybody can respect a fast marathon. It's like a very widely accepted. Everybody knows a marathon. Everybody knows the distance, right? They do it in the Olympics. And like, when did you learn that ultra marathoning was a thing?
Uh, Probably 6 months into my running journey. Or
Yeah,
at least be like
exactly.
was like a normal thing. Like people did it kind of regularly. You know what it was? It was Andy. I mean, Andy Glaze, someone who now I've become like internet friends with, which is just crazy to me because I would watch his videos. I'd be like, this guy is nuts. Like, who has a job as a full time firefighter, but also then puts in 100 miles a week? Like that just insanity to me. And so like it was like so unfathomable that it was enticing. And then the Cocodona 250 doc about Eric. His name will come back to me, but his doc came out on YouTube, and I watched it. And I'm like, wow, I want to do this one day. And this is before I even started making running content. So like, this is just me, just like dreaming as a guy sitting on his couch. Nobody knew who I was, and yeah, something about that just like fires me up. I don't know. It was very it was just like one of those moments where a switch flipped and I was like, okay, that's the progression.
Yeah. And I think my point with that too was that I was sitting in my dorm room and I stumbled upon a YouTube recommended video. It was Where Dreams Go to Die. I'm sure you've seen that documentary. It's Gary Robbins at the Barkley Marathons. And I was watching it and I was like, people do this? Like, you can run 100 miles? And that became like a thing for me of like, I want to do this one day, right? And I think that, if you walk, you and I, we are in the space and we talk to people who do ultra marathons. So it seems kind of normal to us, but this is a not normal thing. And running these extreme distances, no matter how you break it up, whether it's fast or slow, you walk, covering that distance in one go is something that so few humans, even though it might not seem like it to us, actually do, that it is, I guess, inspiring in that way, right? I mean, not to say that running a 2:30 marathon isn't impressive. Of course it is, but I just think that it's more popular, and that's always been an appeal to me, that less people do this thing, which is why I like it.
No, 1,000%. That's kind of why I've ever done anything in my life, right? And it's so unintentional. Like I feel like so many of the things I do, and this is not to sound like narcissistic, are to break these barriers, right? So like when I was first out of college and I got a big boy job and I was like, I can go buy a car. I went and bought an F-150 wearing Birkenstocks and a tie-dye t-shirt because I needed to defeat like this weird, like, big truck guy with an ego issue type thing. Or, like I will wear a lot of pink because guys don't traditionally wear pink. I will, try and be the big dude at a skinny people run club, like I will, something about like going and trying to break these barriers just entices the hell out of me. So to be like in that small group of ultra marathoners absolutely is something that like I need to beat in my own head. I don't know what it is. There's something that just like so different about, saying I'm an ultra marathoner versus I'm a marathoner. Not that there's anything wrong with being a marathoner, because that's cool as fuck too. Or even a half marathoner, or even a 10K, or even a 5K. It really doesn't matter. You go and do your thing, but that's just what gets me going.
Where do you think that comes from? Your desire to sort of be different?
I don't like people who feel like they have too much power, in the sense that like I never liked like the ultra cool kids in school, right? Like I felt like I was a pretty popular guy because I could just get along with everyone, but I never liked like those three kids that were at the top that like everyone admired. I thought that they needed to be taken down a notch. And I think that's kind of how I am with like everything in my life. And maybe part of it is jealousy. Like there's probably a deep part of me that's like very jealous of like the things that people do that I feel need to like for example, like I go to a tracksmith run and I stick out like a sore thumb. Part of me is jealous that these people quote unquote look like runners, but also part of me, like the majority of me, recognizes like that's not me, and I also deserve to have my own space here, as well as all the other people who feel like they're excluded from these situations. So I'm going to go make this space and hopefully become, more inviting to other people. And I think that's partially it. And I think so much stems from like a hockey background too, right? Because it's like you see the top three guys on the ice, you go and you beat up on them. Like you try and, hit them kind of harder. You tear them down a little bit so that they are brought down to an even playing field. And then it's a, better game for your team, stuff like that. So I think it kind of stems from there. I don't know. It's a big, probably something I should go to therapy about, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they say, right? I feel the same way. One of the traits that I have that I'm noticing is, so I hate this quality in other people, but like the chip on the shoulder mentality of like, I'm going to prove everybody wrong. Like that seems so elementary to me. And anytime somebody has that mindset, especially people who talk about it, I'm like, oh God, like get away from me with that. But I have that in ways that, I'll give you an example. I reached out to a guy who is a researcher on marriage, and he, keeps up with a lot of the, marriage trends, relational statistics, things like that. And I was curious to talk to him. So I reached out to him to be on my show, and he just responded with like it wasn't that rude, but it was kind of like, no, it was in regards to like the audience of the show. Once I got to a certain point, then he would come on the show. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to far surpass this, and I will never invite this guy on the show. And I don't know, that's just like my internal dialogue with that. And I think that in a similar sense, I'm very similar to you in that regard, where I've always just done something, perhaps even that I didn't want to do because it was different than what everybody else wanted to do. And if I like something and then it becomes popular, I don't want to do that anymore. And I do think at times, sometimes I'm like, I got to let that go. But I don't know. Sometimes it's just part of your personality, who you are.
No, very much so. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because like I'm the same way, or I'm kind of different. Like somebody says like something like that to me. Let's say I reach out to someone and they're like, "Yeah, you're not big enough for us yet." Part of me is just like, "Fuck you." Like fine. Like, but I don't need to then go and like change anything to like surpass them and then not invite them. It's like, yeah, it's just like, fuck you, whatever. That's fine. That works. And, like if it's rude, of course. If it's like a very genuine, like, hey, we really appreciate it, like you're just not quite big enough yet, that's very okay. That's very appropriate. But if someone was rude about it and like, hey, get to these numbers, then you can ask me to be on your ship, dude, fuck you. Like that's all it is. Like, I'll see you later. But dude, that's actually funny, because I was talking to someone about it the other day. We were talking about Game of Thrones, and I'm like, I've never seen Game of Thrones in my life, and I probably never will. And they were like, why? I'm like, I think it was just too popular when it was out. Like that's all anybody talked about, and I wanted no part of that. And I think that there's like this super like hipstery kind of like conundrum that brings me into like, oh yeah, I'm just different. I'm just different than everyone. I don't like popular things. But it's like, no, I think internally I'm just like, I don't care. Like if everybody's seen something, then what makes it so amazing? It's like, why do we put it on such a pedestal that everybody needs to watch this thing? There's plenty of space for a lot of other things. It's like the same way I don't understand the craze with celebrities, right? Like, why do we, like Taylor Swift, for example, we should not have to give her 10 bodyguards at any given moment. Like, if you are going to Taylor Swift because you are a crazed fan or or some kind of weird stalkery thing, you are the issue. Like, we should not be this hyper obsessed with any one human being. It's like terrifying to me. So it's like, I think that there's like a big issue there that we should probably examine as society more than anything. But I mean, this is turning into more of an existential kind of chat. But yeah, I mean, just nothing popular ever seems to like rub me the right way. Kind of got to go out of
Yeah,
the box.
I would concur with that. I also think when it comes to like celebrity, and maybe this is just a byproduct of I have a lot of hobbies, but it's just a time thing. It's like, how do you guys worry about stuff like that? Or like,
Right?
I'll go to the
Yeah.
gym and somebody will be like, did you see what happened with this person? I'm like, no, I didn't see what happened with this person. Like, what happened? And then it's like a big deal, right? But yeah, you're right. We probably shouldn't talk too much more about that because we'll get into the existential dread of you know having a life changing work or something like that. But something that I am curious about with your running journey specifically is when you started running, has there been anything that you've uncovered that you didn't expect before you started?
Oh man, so much stuff. First and foremost, I never realized how kind of tiny the running community is, right? It is something that can link you with thousands of people across the world that you have no idea you have so many connections with. And the number one being running, but just like kind of it being the glue that brings you together is pretty insane because I mean I see it almost every day. People from countries all across the world, people just being like, yo, dude, I love the video. And I'm like, that's insane to me. Someone from Australia is enjoying my content literally thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away. That's bonkers. And it's like, we all just kind of sometimes end up at these marathons. It's like you go to the New York City Marathon and you have people from every walk of life. So it's a tiny little community, which is really awesome. And then other than that, I mean, I never thought I could enjoy running, right? And running was always the punishment whenever we played sports. It was, because you messed up a play, because you forgot, a cover or anything, whatever the issue was, you probably ran for it. And that really turned me off. And and probably also is like, I didn't realize how fun running could be, right? Like running you can really make it anything you want to be. You can run fast, you can run slow, you can run backwards, you can run sideways, you can run to get your groceries. And it's like you can really manipulate it to fit into your life in such a fun way. So, I mean, just the exploration of running itself has been really awesome. So it's a cool opportunity it's given me in my life and something I never want to get rid of now.
I remember when I was probably maybe still 19 or 20, but I had this app on my phone and it told me where the buses were on the school campus. And I had like 4 minutes to make this bus and I was all the way across campus and I was like, I'm going to run it. And I actually ended up making it to the bus in time. And I sat down and I remember like not being tired. And I was like, and I had been training for my 50 miler at the time. And I was like, this is why this is important because I can run across campus and I'm not tired. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, you're so right. I remember one day, or like many years ago, it was probably like 2018, whenever Casey Neistat was still posting daily, and he made a video about how he never wants to not be able to run a marathon at the drop of a hat. Not necessarily run it fast, but just be able to complete 26.2. And I was just like, that guy is freaking insane. I can't believe he would say such a thing. Like, that's absolutely bonkers. And now that I'm not quite at marathon. Like, I couldn't run a marathon at the drop of a hat, but I could go run a half marathon tomorrow if you were like, hey, let's go run a half marathon. And so I think that that's like the coolest part where it's like, oh, I could just go and do this like physical thing and it would be all right. I wouldn't die.
I think you'd be surprised, dude. The Saturday after Thanksgiving this year, I ran. It was a similar endurance event to the one you described earlier. It's a 1.2 mile loop on a 6-hour clock, and you just repeat it. And I got through a half marathon without stopping, and then I walk ran, and I ended up getting like 20. It was just over a marathon distance in like 6 hours, but it was. I haven't ran. I didn't run before that for like 6 or 8 months, something like that. And anyways, that's an aside. But I'm curious.
No, you're so right.
I was just going to say, when you started running, how long did it take before you sort of made that connection of like, oh, this is something that I actually enjoy?
It took a minute. I mean, I really had to force myself into it. Like, I got the inspiration from the New York City Marathon and started, but like after a month of interval walk running for 45 minutes to an hour each night, or like 5 nights a week, and then really never making it past like 3.5 miles, it really drove me nuts. To be completely honest. Like, I was like, when is it gonna break through? Like, when is it just gonna make sense? When is it gonna pay off? And then probably it was like 2.5 months in, I went for my first ever 4 mile run, and like I broke down and started crying. It was the first time I ever got the runner's high. It was the first time I ever like felt like a runner, in quotes. Like, it was just like the most magical night ever. And that was like the moment it all just clicked. Like, oh, this is what people are chasing. And then you start chasing it forever. And now it's like something that like you really gotta even try and work to get towards again, because like those runner's highs don't come every day. So, you gotta try and find your pockets where you really, start to take in those longer miles. But no, I think that was the big turning point for me. And then once I hit the marathon and did the ultra, it was like, okay, well, now I really have set a bar for like how far I can go. Let's push it. And like, let's just keep pushing that bar up. So it went from being something I was like chasing to like something that I now know is achievable, and let's like kind of work at it and have fun with it.
I think that's worth mentioning just for people that listen, because I think I still have conversations with people all the time. I'm a fitness coach. And so even still within that community, there's a lot of, oh, how do you like to run sort of dialogue? And I think it's just worthwhile to mention that it literally takes months sometimes for you to do it consistently enough to where you realize like, oh, I actually enjoy doing this. And, that's like everything, right? In order to be competent, it takes a long time of toiling with something before you can really get your fingers around it and say, you know what, I can do this. I am a runner, whatever you're trying to become. It just takes a long time to develop that relationship with it.
Yeah, it's the 10,000 hours rule, right? Like, it takes 10,000 hours to master something. And honestly, some of us may never even hit 10,000 hours of running, but still fall in love with it. It's one of those things that, takes some time, because it's also ever evolving, right? Your running journey this week might be completely different than your running journey next week. You could hear, oh, there's a 5K that you want to PR, and just pops up out of nowhere, and you're like, hey, let's go PR 5K, but then run a long race in 2 months, and that could change on the turn of a hat. So it's ever evolving, and at the end of the day, you only get what you put into it, right? So like, if you want to work through those couple of months, you'll get a lot out of it. Like, those are the hard months for a reason. They are there to kind of challenge you and really make you appreciate what's going to come after. So I get that DM a lot. Like, hey, I've been running for a month. I've been going for almost 2 months now, and I'm really not seeing the results I would hope to see. I'm like, you're working through the hardest part of it. You are genuinely so close to breaking through. You just have to kind of keep going, because I know it sucks. Like, the issue with the internet, right? And I've even done this by accident, is like, we make it look far too easy or simple or sexy, I like to say. When at the end of the day, getting started in running, there's nothing sexy about it. It hurts, you chafe, you bleed, your feet hurt, you get shin splints, but you're so close to breaking through that and finding something really special. So keep going.
I've been giving a lot of thought to that. I feel like the just fitness space in general, running would be included in this. It gets kind of convoluted in a way of sort of glorifying the horrible things that you have to go through in order to get competent at something. And I think in the running community specifically, that gets expedited by running is getting popular among fitness people in general. And so what you have now is a lot of jacked people running. And then I think a lot of regular folk come in and they see, this person with six pack abs running marathons, and they think, okay, I'm going to start doing this thing. And they didn't get that body doing marathons. They got it because they've done 15 years of weight training before this. And what you're saying is very true, where it's like, in reality, you're going to get blisters and shin splints, and you're going to smell bad because you were just out running for 2 hours in the sun. And like you and I, when we talk about it, that's the fun part of it at some level, right? That sort of suffering aspect of it. I look forward to that. But I think a lot of people just don't realize at some level, you're getting yourself into something that is going to push you in ways you probably haven't been pushed before.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, you can play any sport you want. I was a college athlete. Like, I've never felt the soreness and pain and things that I feel now when I was doing that training. It's so unique to that space. And whenever somebody is like, "Hey, I only see six pack. I only see Matt Choi. I only see this, that, or the other thing. Nick Bear, whoever online." I say, go to a local race. It doesn't have to be a marathon, but maybe a half marathon, a 10K, whatever, and just look at everybody who's participating. I promise you'll see at least 10 people who look very similar to you or how you would perceive yourself. Because at the end of the day, they're not all posting online. You're not seeing everybody, the average person who likes to go out for a race online because, they don't want to make that a priority, which is great. I think that's an amazing thing, but go watch an actual race, and that's where you'll see like-minded people who look like you. I mean, that was the thing about the New York City Marathon, right? Like, I had watched my girlfriend, who's in unbelievable shape, has a six-pack, is super skinny, is like just can run forever. I'd watched her train for her whole marathon, and in my head, I'm like, you're nuts, you're crazy. But also, I'm like, you probably have to look like you to run this marathon. Then I get out there and I'm watching, and I'm like, wait, that's a bigger dude. Oh, that's also a bigger dude. That's, and I'm seeing all these people, and the dots started aligning in my head, and I'm like, no shit. This is every you can look like anything. You can be out here in basketball shorts and a big t-shirt. You don't have to have all the get up or anything. So it's like, you go out to the race and experience that for yourself, because I promise you'll find yourself connecting emotionally with runners as they walk by or run by, that you've never seen in your life and you'll never see again, but because you somehow resonate with them, your energies kind of transfer, that like you will be moved to start running and seeing things like that.
I think that's why fitness is cool. It's because it shifts the focus from, I think a lot of people, when they get into any sort of physical thing, it's usually either from the perspective to lose body fat or to get fitter in some general sense. But if anybody who sticks with something long enough, they find they stick around for vastly different reasons. And it becomes more about capability. How far can I run? How fast can I push myself? Especially compared to the person that I was a year ago, right? Like, am I lifting heavier weights? Am I going farther? And that's what I always say to people. There comes a time in your fitness journey or running journey, wherever it is, where you all of a sudden wake up and you realize that you don't care about the thing that you probably initially cared about when you started, and you care about other stuff. And that's when you know that you have gotten over the hump.
Dude, couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, for me, it's like I get the weight loss question a lot. And like, I'd be lying if I said I didn't partially start this to lose some weight. Like, I was pushing 300 pounds, if not over it. I was eating, like shit. And I was like, one of these things needs to change. I either need to start exercising or I need to start eating better. And I don't want to eat better. So I'm going to start running. And it's like, that was part of it. Yeah. But then also I was very enticed by, running, like the apparel and the shoes and the different things you could do in the space and, going those long distances. So like, that's what really enticed me. But in the back of my head, I was like, and I'll hopefully lose a couple pounds. And I lost a ton of weight at first. It came right off. I lost probably like 40 pounds. And since then, like, I couldn't tell you what the hell I weigh, because that is so far from the thing that I care about at this point. Like, I genuinely couldn't care less. I want to go run with my friends. I want to go run races. I want to go meet new people. Those are the things I care about. if I lose weight, so be it. But if not, I'm also not mad at that because I can still go and run a marathon, even if I do weigh 260 pounds or whatever it is today.
Yeah. I think that's a hopeful conversation to have too, because I work with people all the time that are in this state of like high anxiety of say I'm working with somebody that just started tracking food, and they just like can't not think intensely all the time about the amount of food that they've consumed and the breakdown of their macronutrients. It's hopeful to talk about the idea that you can eventually get to a place where you don't worry about that, and all of this work that you just put in will inform the decisions that you make in the future, and you'll be more lax with yourself, and you won't care that you eat a donut. In fact, you'll look forward to it because you get to eat it with your friends and get to hang out, and that becomes the thing that's more important to you. And so I think, and to bring running into it specifically, anybody who's starting who has this like weight loss thing in mind, or whatever it is, it's good to just know that like your relationship with that is going to change drastically if you stick it out.
Yeah, without a doubt. And like, I mean, to be completely open, and I've talked about this before, I had an eating disorder in college. I still technically do because my brain is wired the way that it is. When I think of, losing weight, my brain immediately turns to all the people in my life when I was being recruited into college that were like, dude, lose weight, stop eating, just lose it, do whatever you have to do to lose it. And like in my head, do whatever you have to do to lose it is starve myself, take 4 Dulcolax a night, shit my brains out, and repeat the cycle again tomorrow. Like that for some reason is what I turn to, because it's like the thought of counting calories or counting protein, macronutrients and stuff, that was way too tedious for me. It was easier, okay, just starve yourself. That's easier than counting up, what your intake is. So it's like, as long as that is so far out of my spectrum, it doesn't even cross my mind to be like, oh yeah, I should probably think about food because I'm doing all these other things that I'm like, oh, this is awesome and I feel healthy. So like just keep eating whatever you want to eat, because like that's going to keep you healthier than if you start starving yourself. You're going to start getting hurt. You're going to start seeing some of the issues that you were seeing before. Like it was bad. So yeah, definitely something to like kind of, keep in the back of your head when you're getting started.
If you could give top 3 things for anybody getting into running, what would you say to them?
You know, I would say first and foremost, make sure that you're not making too many lifestyle changes at first. Like if you're getting into running, don't also try and fix your diet and your sleeping habits and your journaling and reading more books. It's too much at once. You're trying to control far too many things in your life. So if you want to get into running, but don't change anything else in your life. Keep eating the way you eat, keep going to work. Just try and work it into your schedule. Number 2, make sure you're having fun. Like don't get out there and force yourself to run. If you don't feel like running one day, go for a walk. Go for 45 minutes of a bike ride. Go for something that just gets your legs moving, because that'll benefit you more, as you go down the line with your running journey. And then lastly, sign up for a race. Sign up for something that like you have the opportunity to look forward to. Give yourself, a little bit of like a runway there, right? So let's say you've never run before. Let's schedule a 5K for 3 months later. I think 3 months is probably a fair amount of time that you will be like working at that 5K. You'll be pushing to get to that 3.1 miles, you'll be really trying to get there. So give yourself something to look forward to. And even if something to look forward to is just like maybe on the weekends we go for a run and we get donuts. That's a great thing to look forward to. That keeps it fun. That keeps it interesting. And also don't go and spend $1 million to start running. If you have a good pair of running shoes, wear them. If you don't, that is probably a decent investment, but don't go get like new clothes, a new watch, a heart rate monitor. All that stuff is so like you don't need it. You can genuinely just start with a good pair of shoes.
Dude, like I said, I always just say I'm a dabbler when it comes to running. I train for a thing and I stop. And recently, probably in the last maybe 4 months, I've started running again. Literally, I'm wearing my just like a G-Shock Casio solar powered watch, doesn't track anything, and I just like set my timer and I go run for time. And
dude, it's the best. I have the same. Well, so I have a fancy Koros, but I have this one. So this button starts my run, but this button, if I hold it down, just starts my timer, and I use that like every night of the week. Basically, I will start off the I'll start the run on Strava for my phone or whatever, but I won't look at it. I'll just run for time because that is just so much more enjoyable to me. When I look on my calendar and my coach has like 90 minutes, hour, 20 minutes, whatever of running, sign me up every day of the week. I'd rather see that than 10 miles or 8 miles or whatever.
When I was training for my 100 miler, I wanted to be a little bit more experimental with how I was training. And actually, the highest mileage week that I did for my 100-mile prep was 44 miles. So it was very, very
No
short.
shit.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And what I did was I'm a CrossFit coach. So I would do CrossFit basically Monday, Tuesday, Friday. I would run Wednesday. It would kind of be like a mid-distance, harder intensity run. I would take Thursdays off, and then I would do 2 back-to-back long runs on Saturday, Sunday. So not uncommon compared to what you would find in most running programs. Other than I just didn't have a lot of runs during the week, and I just did for time. Like I literally tracked no distance the entire time. I just ran at a certain intensity for a certain amount of time. And I think the longest I did a 6-hour run and ended up getting like 30 miles or so. But I mean, that was as far as I pushed myself. And not only did I enjoy myself way more, like I had way less pressure and intensity to like hit certain distances. But I felt great. Like I was squatting again 2 weeks after my 100-miler, which I have not been known to recover very well from the ultra distance runs that I've done, but I felt great.
That's awesome, man. I love that. I mean, I felt like that was the biggest thing my coach implemented for me for marathon training was the back-to-back long runs. Like that felt a lot more like I was getting something out of it than like my 18 and 20 mile run. Like, yeah, those were fine. They're important. I think it's important to hit the wall before you go out there, even though I didn't even hit the wall for my 20 miler, which kind of disappointed me. But the weekends when I would have like 15 and 10 or 17 and 12, those weekends beat me up. Like those are the ones that really cooked me. And kind of similarly though, after my ultra, I was running 3 days later. After the marathon, I couldn't run for a week. Something about just like I trained a little bit differently, kind of similarly actually, just back-to-back long runs, pretty chill during the week. People thought I was crazy because I was like only a month out from the New York City Marathon, where it was like I didn't really get good training in for my ultra. But hey, whatever I did worked because it felt pretty great and I felt awesome 3 days after.
Yeah, I would say it probably had a lot to do with intensity during the run, but also I'm sure you were probably more stressed about your marathon.
Yeah, New York City, that's a whole rat's nest to unpack itself. I mean, that was from like you have to break it into like the social aspect and the physical. So like the physical of the weekend is you run an entire marathon just in the days leading up between the events you're going to the expo, not being able to get off your feet as early as you would hope, and then going and running a marathon, which you have to be in the corrals at 5 a.m. basically and wait until my starting time was like at 11 a.m. So there was like a whole just slew of physical toughness that has to go into that before you even run the New York City Marathon. And then the social side of it, that was my first ever weekend where I really went out and was Herm runs in public at a running event. Like that was the first time I was getting recognized. It was the first time I was hosting an event with the Shakeout Run, and that added up really quickly. And I haven't talked about this much, but there was a time on like we ran Sunday, so there was a time like Saturday afternoon where I was sitting at lunch with my aunt, my mom, and I just looked at them and I was like, I can't do this anymore this weekend. Like I can't socially, like I love meeting people. I love, getting to take selfies and have a good time. But like my social battery was just done. Like it was cooked. I felt like I had to be on for 36 hours leading up to that. And I genuinely like got in an Uber, passed out in the back of an Uber, then went to the hotel and just put my legs up and turned off my phone. I didn't go on social media until like 8 p.m. the night before just to post my like flat lay on my story, because I was cooked. It was hard. It was the first time I had ever, been like noticed like that. So yeah, that was tough.
Is that something that you worry about?
In what sense?
Maybe potentially as you gain a little bit more traction, people notice you more. Is that something that worries you?
No, I've learned how to kind of take it in. So like I get it like pretty frequently now. That's not like, I don't want it to sound like self-centered or anything. It just happens. And now it doesn't really get to me all that much. Like I think it was just like the initial, like I didn't think that was going to be a thing. And now that I'm aware that it's going to be a thing, like when we're down in Atlanta, stuff like that, I get to meet all these awesome people and have great conversations. It was awesome. So it's not something I really worry about anymore. It's definitely something I need to regulate. Like, for example, like Boston Marathon and London coming up. So like I know that I'm at the Boston Marathon. I'm going to be hosting 2 events and a cheer station. And I know it's going to be a super social weekend and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a blast. And then once I get to London, I've kind of done a lot of my social stuff, so I can really go and have a good time in London, maybe do one shakeout run and, do a bunch of touristy stuff outside of that. So it's like, I think now that I have an idea of it and the regulation that I can introduce to it, I'm pretty comfortable with it now. But that first time really caught me off guard. It was a lot.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing because there's so few people that have notoriety in general that like you can't really be taught how to deal with that other than you just have to wait till stuff like that happens to you. And then I guess handle it as best you can when it pops up. This kind of segues well into a conversation that I wanted to have with you, which is the state of, I guess, content creation in general. I have talked to a number of people about this on the show. Actually, the episode that comes out on Friday this week is with a guy named Professor Phil Reed, and he studies social media addiction and internet use and related fields like that. And I just notice there's been such a shift with content on social media in the last 3 to 5 years. That's nothing new. I think everybody notices that, where it's very selly, clicky. How old are you?
26. Yeah, 26.
26. Yeah, cool. So I'm 23. So we're practically the same age. And I'm sure you can remember a time, and I know that this isn't really true because like I grew up playing like the GameCube, so I don't really remember much without the internet, right? But when social media came out, specifically Instagram, it was very much what it was supposed to be. You share pictures with people that you know, and that's it. And there was no worry about the amount of likes that you get. I mean, maybe to some degree, right, within your social circles, but nobody cared about that. And I just think that as the desire to create content grows, we're seeing this shift where everybody's getting very self-involved with their own personal brand or page. Man, I just don't know what to make of it. And as somebody who's in that space, maybe speak broadly on that. What's your perception of the current creator climate right now?
I think it's so hard. I think we're in a time where we're more addicted to social media than we've ever been, but we're also as addicted to making like the most of ourselves as we've ever been, if that makes sense. So like everybody wants to be a brand, right? I mean, it's why I make content. It's why, XYZ makes content. So because of that, we're all competing, right? Human nature is such a competitive thing. We're all searching to be the best at what we do, which is why I think you find success and you kind of eat it up while you can, but you're also in defense mode where you're like, okay, but like what happens when this ends? What happens when this stops? And I think that like so many creators are kind of trapped in this like, okay, I'm gonna ride this high right now while it's here, but like have no clue what they'll do if it stops. Like if TikTok really gets banned tomorrow, like what are you gonna do? Does it all just go out the window? How do you like go back to living a normal life where you're not putting everything you do on the internet? And I think that that's like a really important question that we don't ask ourselves nearly enough. Like, I think it's so easy to get caught up. Like once you taste it, like taste the success of making good content and it being received well, that like we're just trapped and it's so hard to like think about getting out of it. So in terms of being a content creator, that's where I think content creators versus influencers will really start to separate. So I don't mean this like in an offensive way to anybody, but there are influencers out there who make, your content that is like very, it could be made by like an AI, like Chat GPT could make your video for you because there's nothing unique about it. But you're doing well, which is great, and I'm happy for you, and you're getting the bag. But when this all explodes, where are you going to be? Because people will start just watching content again for wanting to watch content, right? People will stop caring about your 30-second video and go back to long form videos that you find interesting. And I think that that is kind of, I think there's going to be like a big explosion eventually, whether it be next year, whether it be in 10 years. I don't know when it'll be, where there's a massive divide between storytellers and people who's trying to sell you stuff. And so I try to hedge myself towards the storyteller side as often as possible with the occasional, influencery type thing.
It's really interesting you say that. I've come up with this idea that I call the creator crash. Right now, content on Instagram, TikTok, social media feels like NFTs did 2 years ago. Like, I don't know if you got into NFTs, but
I didn't know. I was too into Dogecoin.
yeah, Dogecoin, exactly. But insert any other big market thing that the bubble gets too big and it pops. And it feels like that. There's so many people making content. And I would like to think that I'm different, right? I'm hosting a podcast exploring the idea of goodness, and I speak with researchers and professors and athletes and business owners, and it's a very diverse group of people talking about a diverse array of ideas, all in hopes to become better and improve yourself. And a large part of that conversation is, at least I urge people, is to separate themselves from the use of social media and technology as much as you can, especially if it's impacting your life in a negative way. But I also don't, it's not lost on me the irony of the fact that you and I are having this conversation. And part of it is because of the content that you have put out that I have found. And I wanted to get the opportunity to meet you. And then I also hope that people listen to this show so that I could potentially monetize it, so that I could potentially continue to do this. Right. Yeah. So I don't really know where that all stands. This goes back to what we were talking about before of like doing what's popular. Sometimes I feel like I think about my desire to do this and I'm like, am I doing what I'm telling other people that is stupid?
No, 1,000%. I mean, I like it would be naive to be like, oh yeah, we are doing this on a podcast. We're like we are doing the thing. But at the same time, it's like, what is your intentionality behind it, right? Did you start this podcast because you want to make money? Or do you start this because you want to tell stories and hopefully eventually you can get some money out of it in an authentic way? Because that's the better, like more reasonable way to approach something, in my opinion, right? As soon as you feel like you can, capitalize on people, that is where like I began having an issue, right? So like you started this out of the love of telling stories and finding goodness in many different things. That is so rad. That's awesome. That's important. And you weren't starting it because you're like, hey, maybe, I don't know, name a brand wants to give me X amount of dollars to read an ad on my show. Like, yeah, that'll be really dope. And that is the reward of, working hard to tell those stories and share people's opportunity, like giving people the opportunity to share their passions and different findings. So it's like, what did you get into it for? Right. So like for me, yeah, I'll do some sponsored ads. I have to, like, in order for me to continue to make the content that I'm enjoying and putting out, I have to do some sponsored ads to get a couple dollars to make it worth that amount of time that I'm dedicating to it. But I'm not gonna like give you an ad just to give you an ad. Like there are people in the running space that they would they would sell you, I don't know, something horrible for enough for if you put a price on it, they'll sell it to you. And like that kind of doesn't sit with me ethically. So like I think that's where my dilemma is.
The man who I spoke to, Phil Reed, about internet addiction, and he was talking broadly about internet use, but I think this carries over well, is he pretty much stated, hopefully this doesn't sound cliche, but it's always about revisiting your values, right? If you have this cyclical nature of being super invested in social media and using it compulsively, and then you delete it, and then it finds its way back into your life. It's important to, when you have space away from it, to think, what am I using this for? Is it to connect with people, or is it to numb my brain and mind? And similarly, it sounds like what you're saying is the intentionality and the value system of the individual that is creating the thing is the most important thing. And I also think you can probably see through that. Like, it's very clear when somebody's doing something for money versus when somebody's doing something out of passion or whatever. Like, I would hope anybody who listens to the show can see that I genuinely like learning things from people, and this is a really cool forum to do that. And for the most part, obviously, there's so much growth to be made in terms of viewership of the show, but I'm getting out of the show already what I want from it, which is talking to people and learning from people. And yeah, I would love it if it could grow, because that's a statistic of the work that I've put in, and it's good to get that reward. But for the most part, I'm already there, and I think that distinction is important. It's the cliche of enjoying the journey. I'm very aware that this is the journey for me, and that at some point, whether I have to do something else or I quote unquote make it, it won't be like this forever.
Yeah, I think that so much of it too is like, because it's so glamorous, right? It's like, oh, sit behind a microphone and talk. Oh, sit behind a camera and make a video. It like looks so easy and like it's nothing. There's so much more that goes into this stuff that it's really hard to explain. It's like if you really want it, you do have to grind. Like, you have to work your ass off. You have to go make connections. It's like things like making a connection with a company, and like maybe you take 6 hours of your day to go drive down to their group run, make that connection, drive 6 hours home. Yeah, there's nothing sexy about that, but the video you made is really awesome, and it looked like you just had a ton of fun and did nothing else. So it's like, you have to be willing to grind. Otherwise, you're not going to find that success. And like, that's also part of the storytelling thing, right? Like, it is a grind to come up with, let's say you put out 4 videos a week for 52 weeks. That's over 200 videos a year. That's a lot of ideas and a lot of content, and it's really hard. So if you follow a script where you're putting out the same video 4 times a week, kind of like, what are you doing? You're not really putting in the work to, get to that next level, to really take your content or your thing to the next, stage. And if it's working for you, great. That's awesome. I'm proud. I'm stoked for you. But like, I think it's better when you really, work for it.
Yeah, Mark Manson, he's the author of a book called The Subtle Art of Giving a Fuck. And
Love that book.
So his model of like, do the thing that you're willing to suffer through, or like, what pain can you handle? That's what we're talking about. Where to use that example for the podcast, I don't think many people realize, when I had Dr. Phil Reed on the show, I pulled up all of his research papers. I found the relevant ones. I read through them, like scholarly research papers from academia that you have to sift through a bunch of BS jargon that probably shouldn't be there, to the conclusion and understand the way they conducted the study to see if it was valid. And then you get like 3 questions just from that one paper. And then you have to read another one and get 3 questions. And you have to develop, you have to work with that in such a way that I probably spent 4 or 5 hours prepping for that episode. I spend that much time prepping for a lot of episodes. And I probably don't have to. I've been doing the show for almost a year now, and I still need to tighten some things up, but I feel like I'm at a point where I probably could just come on here and riff with somebody for the most part, and it'd be okay, but it wouldn't be my best, and that's not what I'm doing it for. And but my point with all this is those are things that I have found that I like to suffer through for the most part. Yeah, it sucks a lot of the time, but you have to find the thing that even though it sucks or it's hard, it's kind of easy for you, right?
1,000%, man. I mean, I don't love coming up with ideas. Like, I think creativity is like one of those things you can't really force, but there are days where like you have to kind of try and milk an idea out because you haven't posted a video in 2 days and you feel an obligation to post. Even if it's not there from your audience, the platforms are kind of dictating that like, hey, if you don't post for 2 days and then you miss another 2 days, your engagement rate might be a little bit lower because you haven't been posting as much. So although your audience hasn't told you that, sometimes the platforms dictate things like that. So you need to like, try and milk something out of it. But that's not really sexy, right? Like who thinks about like me sitting on the couch over here, staring at the ceiling, trying to come up with an idea doesn't sound like work, but that's me working my ass off. Like that's so much harder than once I have the idea going out and making the video. So it's kind of, but then also it's like things like, I went to Atlanta last week to surprise a buddy running a marathon. Like that's a financial commitment. I didn't get paid to go down there. I didn't get paid to make appearances. I had opportunities to go make appearances and see people that like wanted to do things together, but I didn't get paid for them. So like I paid for that all out of pocket. That was like a big trip. And like, would I do it again every single day of the week? But those are the things that like people don't really consider. It just like looks like this glamorous thing and it was awesome, but still cost money and like time and effort.
Well, dude, I appreciate your time. Let's bring this one home. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we close off?
No, man. I really appreciate you having me on. I feel like we could go for hours. So this was a lot of fun, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You should start a podcast. You're good. You're good on the mic.
It's in the works, my man. Well, probably late 2024. I think we'll have something going. But yeah. I really I appreciate it. I love talking. I used to have a show called. I used to have a show called Anybody and Everybody, kind of similar to what you were saying, though. Like, there was nothing crazy about it. I think a lot of people listen to podcasts every day, and a lot of people have really awesome stories, but no platform to tell them on. So I was trying to give people that platform, and that was a pretty fun show. So,
right on. Well, plug your stuff. Where can people find the content that you put out? Yeah,
so you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Herm Runs, and Joel, actually, we met on Threads. I'm also on Threads now. That's also Herm Runs.
I love Threads, dude. It's my journal.
Threads is going to get me in trouble. I am using it a little bit too much, like 2013 Twitter, and I always forget that like people actually like know who I am now. I'm not just like a random like 18-year-old or whatever on the platform tweeting out my hot takes.
Edgy things that come to your brain.
Yeah, so like I've got a long list of drafts and they're pretty funny, but maybe we'll keep them there.
All right, I'll abstain from putting your threads in the comments so you can, or in the description, so you can keep using it in your delinquent ways.
Throw it in there. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, we'll leave it right there. I'll make sure I put all that stuff in the show notes below for people who are interested in checking it out.
Awesome, appreciate you, man.
Thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of Good People. If you guys are watching on YouTube, before you head out, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our weekly uploads. If you enjoyed this episode while you were listening, please share it with someone you love, perhaps your grandma. We'll see you next time.